The time has come for the Scrafty PvP IV deep dive. In this video, I'm going to let you guys know what the best stat checks are and IVs are for Scrafty in both the Great League and Ultra League metas in Pokemon Go. And just fair warning, things are going to get a little bit goofy in the Great League. Like flip your phone upside down if you think you know what a good IV is. Kind of goofy in Great League PvP. Now, if you're not too familiar with PvP IVs and breakpoints, or if at any point in this video you're kind of getting confused what I'm talking about, I highly recommend checking out my PvP IVs simplified video, link up above and in the description, to get your feet wet before you dive off into the deep end here. And it's kind of ironic too, the PvP IV simplified thumbnail actually features Scrafty, because Scrafty was like one of the first Pokemon I was looking at IVs for way back in the day. And a lot of the principles that I talk about with Scrafty there still hold up to this day as well. But now, we've got a little bit more refinement going on. Also, in this video, I'm going to be dropping a lot of numbers and a lot of names, and it might be a lot to keep track of, right? So if you want to reference anything I talk about in this video, link in the description to my article on GamePress, the Scrafty PvP IV Deep Dive, covering everything I talk about in this video, and actually probably more things than I verbally talk about in this video, because there's a lot of numbers to get through. But it's all highlighted and organized nice and neatly for you. Link in the description to that. And in that article, I also have my PvP IV tables, which will specify which IVs you're looking for to meet those stat checks for Scrafty. And without further ado, let's get in to Scrafty. Starting out with some Scrafty Basics, you want to use Counter. Snarl is not good on Scrafty, and I'd say 9.99999 times out of 10, you're never going to be using the Acid Spray. It's all going to be about that Foul Play and the Power Up Punch. So those are the only moves you have to worry about for Scrafty ever, barring some specific unique circumstances. When it comes to Scrafty in the Great League, I gotta say, Scrafty is pretty comfortable when it comes to any sort of IV spread. Chances are the Scrafty you already have built is probably just fine. In this video, I am going to be highlighting some really high bulk weights and some really high attack weights, but honestly, the Scrafty that fall in between are going to be okay. They're going to get slight advantages from either camp. It's not going to make them better than either camp, right? But it doesn't make it that much worse either. You know, when it comes to these deep dive series, usually I'm telling you guys like, hey, if you're going to build the Azumarill, you got to hold on to that XL candy until you get the SwagTips approved Azumarill, right? You know, if you're going to be bringing rank 1 Obstagoon to the Open Great League, I'm going to politely tell you to step away from the trash and bring the attack weighted Obstagoon. But when it comes to Scrafty, like Scrafty's Scrafty, right? If you got above like, I don't know, 1488 CP on it, and it's a Scrafty, then your Scrafty is probably fine. And then when it comes to Ultra League PvP, the rank 1 Scrafty is like the 9-15-15 or something like that. So the stat range between that Scrafty and any other Scrafty is quite narrow. So by virtue, most Scrafty that hit well for Ultra League are going to be good in Ultra League. So yeah, but I think you do want to be a little bit more prejudiced about your IVs for Ultra League Scrafty, just because you do have that big XL cost. So I'll do my best to highlight for you guys which IVs you want to look out for there. When it comes to Scrafty in the Great League, there are two primary flavors that I'm going to be talking about in this video, and that is the super high bulk Scrafty, and then there's the super high bulk Scrafty, but your phone is now flipped upside down, crazy goofy attack weight Scrafty. To make things simple, I'm going to be talking about the bulk weighted Scrafty first. So when it comes to bulk weight on Scrafty, the high-end matchups that you're looking for to, you know, achieve with it are going to come down to both your defense and your HP stat. So I can't recommend, you know, two specific benchmarks for you, because there ends up being a range based on, you know, your defense and your HP changing. As a general rule of thumb, I'm highlighting the 155 defense stat with a 118 HP stat. If you've got more HP, you could, you know, get away with less defense. If you got more defense, you could possibly get away with less HP. So there is a range. To kind of help simplify this for you guys, or give you something to work with, in the article on GamePress, I actually have the specific bulk-based matchups for you to stress test your own Scrafty IVs against. These aren't the only matchups where you can get an advantage by having high bulk on your Scrafty. It's just that these matchups kind of push the limit for what you can do with a high bulk Scrafty. So when it comes to the PvP IV tables here, which I'll showcase later on in the video, you'll notice that, like, you know, you might have like a 154 defense stat, but you've got like 119 HP. Is my Scrafty bad because it's not on this table? No, your Scrafty is probably still really good, but to verify, make sure to stress test it against these matchups. To add, I also have attack weights for these matchups as well, so you're not just comparing against the rank 1. And I tried to make the attack weights like purposeful, something that you could reasonably run into in the ladder there. Of course, if you're uncertain about the quality of your bulky Scrafty there, you could test against higher attack weights as well. And these also stand to just kind of give you an idea of just how bulky your high stat product bulk Scrafty really is. If you think you're building a high stat product Scrafty, but it's not doing any of these matchups, well then you might as well just stick with your Egg Hatch IV Scrafty, because it's apparently not a high bulk Scrafty. You can't 0-0 Deoxys defense form. You a bulk Scrafty? You know, you can't even do the Venusaur 1-0 shield scenario, and you're calling yourself a bulky Scrafty. You're not bulky, you're a pretender, right? So just to bulk verify your Scrafty there. And if you want an additional frame of reference, because the 155 with the 118 HP is a little high end, the Scrafty that Lurgan Rocket used to get first place in the Liverpool tournament and took fourth place at the World Championship with, uses 155 defense with a 117 HP stat. Which means, yeah, you can get away with less bulk than what I'm recommending here, but I am looking more towards like consistency, right? So if you can get more bulk for a bulk Scrafty, you may as well try to, right? But if not, you know, you can get away with less bulk. Once again, check the matchups highlighted here. For example, Lurgan Rockets can beat the rank 1 Deoxys defense form in the 0-0 shield situation, but against a Mirror Slayer attack weight Deoxys defense form, which isn't even like all that high of an attack weight on a Deoxys defense form, it ends up losing out on that matchup because of the higher attack weight. So look alive. Now that we got bulk Scrafty out of the way, let's talk about that super high attack weight Scrafty. And let me tell you, there's a lot to talk about. So much so that I put together this infographic here. Actually, this graphic was made by Raven8 from the Game Press crew. I put together a little template and they elevated it, so thank you so much for making this graphic so much more pretty. But yeah, Scrafty has a lot going on with its attack stat, and one of the main things that it has going on is charge move priority against a handful of other meta Pokemon. So the first number that you see for each Pokemon here is going to be the attack weight of their rank 1 iteration. More often than not, that's going to be the lowest attack weight for that Pokemon. And then the last number you see is going to be their maximum attack weight, the highest attack weight the Pokemon has. And then when it comes to the blue blocks, that's going to be like the expected attack range that you could, you know, realistically see from an opponent on the GBL ladder. The orange blocks are going to be what I recommend personally for these Pokemon most of the time. If you check my PvP IV deep dives on them, usually it's like focusing on some of these stats, like this one being the big Registeel and Sableye Maker here. And then for Walrein, you know, the Azumarill Breakpoint, stuff like that. Or if I feel like the bulk weight is preferred, then I'll highlight, you know, the bulkier blocks here. And then when it comes to the gray blocks are kind of like unlikely for the species, because while Scrafty doesn't care too much about its bulk, Walrein kind of cares. Obstagoon kind of cares, you know? There's matchups that they really want to have certain defense and HP checks in order to meet consistently, where Scrafty isn't too worried about it. So Scrafty has the potential to push higher. Walrein might want to chill out once it starts reaching like 114 attack weight. So with this, Scrafty is now able to get CMP on these matchups where a lot of opponents might not expect to lose CMP to a Scrafty. For example, most hatch weight Scrafty are going to have about a 112 to 113 attack stat. So if your Scrafty is pushing like 116 attack, you know, they're not really expecting their attack weighted, you know, Walrein, their Ninetales, their Tapu Fini, their Nidoqueens, stuff like that. They're not expecting those Pokemon to lose CMP to Scrafty. And as a result, that means that they could put you into a CMP tie, expecting to just knock you out with a charge move and getting the most amount of farm possible in, and then have the script flipped on them because you've got that high attack weight allowing you to get charge move priority. Now that might sound like kind of wild forehead galaxy brain kind of nonsense going on there. How often is this going to come up, Ryan Swag? But I gotta tell you, now that fast moves are a lot more consistent, I've noticed a lot of people are counting perfectly on the ladder, and they will count up straight to CMP, expecting to get a CMP tie, and they'll throw there. I noticed this a lot in my legend run using my attack-weighted Cofagrigus, where a lot of Walreins would farm up to the Shadow Ball and then throw the Icicle Spear, expecting to get CMP, and then lo and behold, I got charge move priority, and now I'm that much more of a threat against them. In an end game situation, I swap out my Cofagrigus, preloaded with a Shadow Ball, and their Walrein is preloaded with an Icicle Spear. I'm going to win that end game situation. If you want to see my legend run, by the way, for the season, link in the description to that. It's shoutcasted by Daniel Neary, bringing tons of energy and hype to that video. It's a pretty cool line. But that principle worked out for my Cofagrigus. Also applies to the Scrafty here, circumventing expectations with that CMP. And if you think, Ryan Swag, I don't know, this sounds all theoretical, not happening in practice here, and what happened for you, that's Cofagrigus, whatever, doesn't count. Zephy Masty X, second place Bremen champion, world level type player here, actually made a similar graphic charting out the attack weights of the majority of meta Great League Pokemon. And what inspired them to do that was that they actually had their Nidoqueen, their Shadow Nidoqueen, lose CMP to a Scrafty, causing him to lose a match at high level GBL play. So I'm sitting here spitting out this crazy attack weight nonsense to you guys, but people are already out there using the attack-weighted Scrafty, circumventing expectations, and using those expectations and the flip of them to overturn matchups and push their way higher up in GBL. Link, of course, to their post in the description. And it's not just all about the CMP for Scrafty either. Along the way, you will be picking up attack breakpoints, the attack breakpoints, which are also highlighted here on the graphic for it. For the sake of brevity, I'm just going to say what Pokemon you get the breakpoints on. If you want more details about the matchups, link, of course, in the description on Game Press. So yeah, the 111.14, that's going to be for Drapion and Shadow Drapion. The 113 is for the Registeel. 114.51 is for Lickitung, Diggersby, and Galarian Stunfisk, and then also helps out with, higher defense weighted Registeel. The 113 is based on the raid weight. The 114.51 is for like a big defense boy that I talk about in my deep dive. 115.78 can give you a breakpoint on Deoxys defense form, so your attack boy might not be able to do the 0-0, but it can do the 2-2 thanks to this attack weight here. And then the upper echelon of this attack weight will cover the Shadow Swampert in a way that Shadow Swampert ain't going to be used to, because Scrafty just don't have attacks this high out there, right? And then you get all the CMP on top of it, which is pretty exciting. Now, if you want a little bit of a life raft to jump onto in terms of bulk while pursuing this high attack, I found that 148 to 149.11 defense is pretty nice to have, along with 111 to 112 HP. And you can kind of dump on the defense a little bit if you want to. I wouldn't dump too much on it, but if lowering your defense allows you to get, higher HP weights or gives you more options to work with, then I think that's perfectly acceptable. Now the question is, which one's better? The high bulk weight Scrafty or the crazy high attack weight Scrafty? And I gotta say, there's no clear answer. Scrafty's Scrafty. All the different Scrafties, even the Scrafties in between, have advantages. So it's really hard for me to just point out one type of Scrafty and be like, build that Scrafty. It's going to be your best Scrafty, because Scrafty just ain't that kind of Pokemon. What I will say is that when it comes to like lower tiers in GBL, like lower levels of competition, going with a Hatch IV or a bulk weight Scrafty probably will be preferable to the crazy high attack weight Scrafty, just because the amount of times that you can take advantage of that CMP could be limited. High-end players usually farm up to CMP to get that extra energy for the next Pokemon in, right? And that's when you flip the script on them by getting the charge move priority. When it comes to like lower tier kind of players, they're usually just throwing moves as soon as they get them. So your opportunities to get a CMP tie are gonna, theoretically be reduced, right? So that's the only thing I gotta say on that. I'd say if you recognize the advantages that Attack Scrafty can bring to the table, then go for that one. You probably will be able to make use of it. But if you're not really good at counting moves and you're not really good at like saving charge moves for the end game, you're not too confident on your skills as a player right now, then if you do get an attack weighted one, star it, keep it in your bag. One day, maybe you'll be glad you have it, but for right now, maybe stick with like an egg hatch or a high bulk Scrafty. And once again, I want to emphasize that egg hatch Scrafty is fine. I mean, just look at this graphic here again. You can see that there's a myriad of attack weights, right? Most egg hatch Scrafty are going to fall between, like 112, 113 attack. That still has potential for, CMP, still has potential for different breakpoints. So there's still a lot of value in those Scrafty. And then to add to that, they got more bulk than the crazy high attack weight Scrafty. So I think egg hatch Scrafty is a pretty good beginner Scrafty if you don't end up having one of the more high-end type of Scrafty. How many times can I say Scrafty? Here we have a PvP IV table highlighting the Scrafty that meet that super high bulk weight of having at least 155 defense and 118 HP. There's 34 of them. And then as far as how many Scrafty are actually like high bulk Scrafty, there's going to be more than 34 because I have to cut this table at, a defense and an HP range, right? Because like you can make up for lower HP with higher defense, you can make up for lower defense with higher HP, but for the purposes of this kind of table, like I can't do that, right? Because if I set the table to 153 defense because I know a 120 plus HP Scrafty can get away with that, then you're going to have a table that says that a 153 defense with like a 116 HP is acceptable for high bulk Scrafty, which absolutely is not the case. So this is like kind of the template to work off of. If you feel like your Scrafty is almost here or does it a little bit different, then make sure to reference those matchups that are linked in the article there for you to test on pvpoke.com. And then when it comes to the upper echelon of attack weight Scrafty, here are the 20 IV spreads I'm recommending for that. It is a little bit exclusive, right? But you can get some more options if you lower the defense stat here. I probably wouldn't lower it too much lower than 148. Personally, but you can lower the defense to like 147, 146. Maybe it won't bite you in the butt, especially if you have a little bit more of an HP weight going on. But I really do like having at least that 115.78 attack stat to get them breakpoints and to get that CMP. And then obviously having lower attack weights has less CMP potential, but it still has that CMP potential, so that's also acceptable too. The point with my deep dives for the most part is to provide all the numbers for you so you can customize stuff yourself. When it comes to these tables, it's just some for me to point to guide people with that don't want to, build their own tables, which is perfectly acceptable, right? But do know that there is some wiggle room with these tables, more than what these tables might suggest. But yeah, link to both of those tables in the article, which is linked in the description. When it comes to Ultra League Scrafty, I noticed that like the majority of high stat product Scrafty for the Ultra League, which isn't even low attack, like the lowest attack is like 9 attack for the rank 1, right? So egg hatch Scrafty that are like high stat product for that, they're all great. In general, as long as you have at least a 196 defense stat, and you could go a bit lower on that reasonably, and a 148 HP stat, which I won't wiggle on because it's important for the mirror matchup, your Scrafty is going to be functionally as good as like most other Ultra League Scrafty. The rank 1, you don't need the rank 1 when it comes to Ultra League Scrafty. And while the focus of Ultra League Scrafty isn't on the attack weight, there are some useful attack breakpoints that you could shoot for to get some extra consistency in some matchups. 145.73 is probably the nice lowball one, giving you breakpoints on Gyarados, a Raid Registeel, and Charizard. Charizard's not the most meta thing nowadays, but Gyarados, Raid Registeel, both are still pretty relevant. And then going for an even higher attack weight of at least 146.51 can flip the script on Talonflame in the 2-2 shield scenario, which is pretty impressive. And then if you want to go even higher, you could get a more consistent breakpoint on Deoxys Defense Form and Escavalier, but I feel like those Pokemon typically end up having a lower defense stat than the rank 1 does, so like the other attack weights may be functional for that as well. And then also at that higher level of attack, you start bleeding a lot of bulk. So I'd say 145.73 is nice if you care about attack. 146.51 is a little bit of a stretch goal, but 147.37 might be a little bit too much. And here I have a table featuring the 21 better Scrafty PvP IVs for the Ultra League PvP. You'll notice that a lot of these are going to be egg hatch weights, which is really appealing. Some of them are even Lucky Friend trade weights, which is also pretty fantastic here. You will notice that the rankings might be different than what the apps and scanners and stuff you use will tell you, and that's because I have the best buddies removed. I don't think Scrafty is worth the best buddy slot, because your best buddy Scrafty is going to be as good as any of these other Scrafties, and the best buddy slot is pretty contested in Ultra League PvP. You're basically robbing raw stats straight off of like Mandibuzz, Umbreon, Galar Stunfisk, and other Pokemon. For what? To build some other Scrafty, when you see like the majority of these are egg hatch IVs that you can just get commonly anyways. So best buddy Scrafty, I ain't a friend of that one. But these Scrafty, they're freaking awesome. If I had to point out just one IV I like the most, it'd probably have to be the 12-12-14 here, because it does have that high attack weight of the 146.6. The only one of the bunch with that defense weight of the 196 that can do the Talonflame 2-2 shield scenario. It might not be the best one for everyone, but I'm definitely keeping my eye out for this thing. And then once again, you can thrift on the defense a little bit and get away with it if you want other options for a higher attack weight. But I would not thrift on the HP. Like 148 HP, you definitely want that for the mirror matchup. And if you've already built an Ultra League Scrafty, you're probably fine. If it's not on that list, I wouldn't worry about it. Your Scrafty's probably a-okay. It's a huge XL investment, and most of the Scrafty are going to perform as well as Scrafty. You might fall back in the mirror matchup if you don't have that high HP, but how often is the mirror going to play out, you know, to that degree? It's really hard to say. So I'd be pretty satisfied with it. Scrafty's just Scrafty, right? Well, at any rate, that wraps it up for my Scrafty PvP IV deep dive. If you got any questions on this content, of course, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll be happy to help you out. And if you enjoyed this kind of content and you want to see more like it, well, make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. I'd also like to give a special shout out to these Patreon supporters. If you want to support Swagman on Patreon, link in the description. Just imagine, you're on the ladder, $29.97. All you need is a 3-2 to hit legend. As fate would have it, you're at 2-2 right now. You just need that final win. You're up against this opponent. You do the big brain move. You got your Shadow Nidoqueen locked and loaded with an Earth Power, no less, sitting in the back waiting for that end game. They got no shields. You got no shields. And it's a Scrafty. And yeah, the Scrafty is beating the living snot out of your lick-a-tongue, licking it up, getting licked itself by the Pants Man Scrafty. And they think they're going to win. They beat the lick-a-tongue, and they probably have a foul play at this point. But you got the Earth Power and your Nidoqueen. You ain't got nothing to worry about. And then they win the CMP tie. Of course, the one opponent you need to hit legend to do just 1-3-2. Just freaking give me the 3-2 right now. And they have the crazy, goofy, wackadoodle attack Scrafty. That's what this boy is. That's what this Scrafty does.